Thank you for joining us on Bees on the Law, legal talk from the boss perspective. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide legal advice and is not meant to create an attorney-client relationship. Also remember, laws change and differ from state to state, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal advice in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bees on the Law. I'm Camille Canale, the California bee.
And I'm Susan Dawson, the Illinois and Wisconsin bee.
And today we are going to discuss some words and phrases that a business owner should hopefully never use because they can be taken out of context and used against you should an employee become disgruntled, which, as you all know, happens more than we would like to see. So anyway, Susan, what's your number one pick for the day?
My first one for today that I hear a lot is when an employer asks an employee, when do they plan to retire? And the question in and of itself isn't illegal. And I get the business owner perspective of, hey, I've got to plan ahead, right? I might have to find a replacement. I might worry about staffing. I get why that question is asked, and it's asked a lot, especially right now with so much of the workforce nearing that retirement age. But the reason why I take this as one of my top things not to say is it's really easy for a plaintiff's attorney to, grab that little age discrimination when that's not what it was. It's not in and of itself illegal question. You weren't trying to discriminate. You're just trying to plan ahead as a business owner. But all you need is that employee to be up at the middle of the night and see one of those, hey, has anything happened at your workplace ads? Call us. And that plaintiff's attorney will turn that little innocent statement into quite the age discrimination suit. So that is my number one warning of the day. Maybe there's a different way to go about it, but don't come out and say when you plan to retire. What about you, Camille?
So I'm going to go with your theme of age discrimination for my first one. And business owners often, new technology is coming along all the time. I can barely keep up with it. I know if I have an issue, I usually try to find a 12 to 15-year-old because they can solve my phone issue faster than I can any day of the week. But making comments about, with all the new technology, we really need to hire some young people, particularly if you have older employees, can imply that you're not willing to consider older candidates. And obviously that is age discrimination. So while it was an innocent comment, it can be construed in the wrong way, unfortunately. You may not have meant anything by it, but that doesn't change how that could potentially be used against you.
Right.
You got
again,
watch out
for what those plaintiffs' attorneys can get their hooks into, because, right. Yeah. So let's step away from age discrimination and talk about some other things that I see a lot. One is if you don't return that property when you leave the job, we're going to take the cost out of your last paycheck. Or just going ahead and doing it.
No.
Right. I am still so surprised by the number of employers that think you can do that's okay, that you can just, they didn't return their laptop, so I'm going to just deduct it from their last paycheck, or I advanced vacation and I'm just going to take it out of their last paycheck. Now, either one of those can be okay depending on your state if you have the proper documentation and you follow the law. But generally, businesses don't get that documented, don't know that there's a law on this. And then, with that, you're probably talking about a Department of Labor investigation, right? Or if someone a plaintiff's attorney can get their hooks into it, some sort of class action lawsuit, and finding out how many employees have you been deducting from their paycheck. But yeah, no. Do not tell them. Do not make that threat. Do not do it.
Often it's uniforms and computers that are issues here that aren't returned. And I'll tell you, it's a lot cheaper to let go of the uniform than it is to have a wage and hour claim.
Right. Same thing with a computer, and computers aren't cheap, and I get that. But, you know, it's which one do you want? Do you want the lawsuit or do you want the computer back? And a lot of times they're not concerned about the computer. They're concerned about the data on the computer. Well, I know it costs money, but with the appropriate IT setup, you can wipe all the sensitive information off of a computer. So if if it's the data that you want to make sure they don't have, then there's ways to go about that. Not deducting it, not the threat of deducting it from the paycheck is just going to get you into trouble.
Right.
What
And
about
so
you, Camille?
I'm going to go along with a paycheck theme. I'm just going to copy you today. And one issue is, hey, I know you're on your lunch break, but could you? So in California, and we've talked about this a little bit on other episodes, but in California, employees are entitled to breaks and lunch breaks that are uninterrupted. And if you interrupt them and have them do something, which, listen, I think Sue and I will both tell you from time to time, we have to ask people to do, but you got to pay them.
Right.
And you got to pay a penalty in California for doing that. And it may be overtime because you've now interrupted their lunch break and they've gone over 8 hours. So you really have to think about if it's worth interrupting their lunch. It does happen if you're in trial or you're working on a deadline and you absolutely need something immediately. You got to do it, but you got to face the consequences. You can't just ask them and then not take corrective action by either resetting the clock. So let's say they're 25 minutes into their lunch break and you interrupt them for 5 minutes. You can reset their lunch break if you still have time and haven't violated the 5-hour rule in California. Or you got to pay them.
Right.
And make them whole. So it's not that you don't have options, but when you say that, you need to think about the steps and corrective actions that you need to take if you're going to interrupt a break or a lunch break.
Right. Yeah. Same is true here. And well, I'm sure other states maybe don't take as quite the dramatic stance on it as Illinois and California. And it's true everywhere, right? That if someone's not working, then they need to be not working. And if you make them work, then you need to pay them. I mean, there are in some states, there's like a minimum, there's this de minimis rule in the federal concept. And it can also, some states will follow it where, if it's like a small amount, you don't have to pay them. Well, that doesn't apply to interrupting one of their entitled breaks. Right. So like you said, the clock would reset. We're talking about maybe you texted them after hours and asked a quick question and it took a minute. Do you have to pay them for that time? Usually if there's a de minimis rule in your state, if there's the federal de minimis rule and if your state applies by it, then that's not a problem. But interrupting a break, nope. Not something you should ever do. It's so easy to do. Like Camille said, we've all done it. I don't think there's a business owner that hasn't done it, but you need to be aware of it and you need to do something about it. And I have clients ask me like all the time, a bigger problem is, well, they're working through lunch. What do I do? And I'm like, you have to stop them. But they want to work through lunch. Sorry, that's the law. And there's plenty of laws that I know employees don't like either, right? Like they want to leave early, so they want to work through lunch. But you got to stop them. You got to tell them no working through lunch. You got to monitor your employees.
Yeah, it makes sure every state is very different. California's laws are very complex in this area. So my example it can be interpreted and it just depending upon what happens. So make sure you know your state's wage laws and regarding meals and rest breaks. I think that is the big takeaway from this. If you're going to interrupt their meals and lunch breaks, understand what the potential penalties are before you do it.
Right. Well, another thing, jumping on the meal break is, hey, while you're out, could you bring me back a cup of soup? Because you could be turning, depending on your state laws, you're not interrupting their lunch break. They're still getting their lunch break, but you're taking that drive time or that commute time to go to the restaurant, and you're turning that potentially into work time.
Right. And I think even a better example perhaps of that is, oh, you're running out to get lunch. Would you stop at Staples and pick me up a ream of paper?
Right.
On your way back.
But I think a lot of employers would think of that more easily as being work than, hey, can you grab me a cup of coffee and bring it back? Because you, depending on your state, just that simple act could be turning it into work. So things that employers say all the time, Camille and I are no exception to that rule, with the exception of maybe the when you plan to retire and the taking out a last paycheck. I'm pretty confident you and I don't say those, but with the, hey, you're on your lunch break or while you're
we're
out.
Human. Absolutely. We're human and not perfect.
Right. Exactly. So, all right. Well, I think that gives business owners and employers something more to talk about or think about and try to correct. So anything else you want to throw out there, Camille? No? All right. Well, then join us next time on Bees on the Law.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of Bees on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at beesonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.